Salutations, every pup, and welcome to Chapter 17 of the one they call Broccoli by Texiliaz. As always, the link to the fic will be in the description below. And with that out of the way, let's jump on into it. Chapter 19, Dealing with Kachan and Daddy Issues. Chapter Summary. Izuku has an interesting conversation with his childhood friend, which leads to some secrets being spilled. Will the other boy finally believe him? Later, he gets cornered by All Might regarding what he had called him during the USJ incident, and Izuku wants to dig a hole and disappear from embarrassment. Author's notes. Hello everyone! I'm really sorry that this has taken so long. Was participating in a summer exchange and had to focus on finishing that story in time. But now it is finished and I will try not to start any new stories and instead focus on this one and The Box. Also, sorry for the title of this chapter. I just couldn't resist, lol. Anyway, hope you like this chapter. Trigger warnings. Surprisingly, no trigger warnings this time. Izuku's point of view. You wanted to see me? Izuku asked, stepping into the small meeting room where All Might was waiting for him. It was after school, and he was just about to leave when he had gotten a text from his mentor, asking if they could meet. Yes. Come in, my boy. All Might greeted him from the couch, smiling brightly. Izuku locked the door behind him before he moved to sit down on the other side of the couch, turning slightly so he could face his mentor. All Might cleared his throat. First of all, I heard you were the one who finally managed to get Aizawa to rest. So, for that, I wanted to say thank you. I would know that is not an easy feat. It was mostly the vestiges, to be honest, Izuku answered sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck. Yes! I heard about that too, All Might said, almost looking uncomfortable while he shifted in place. Oh, sorry. Before Izuku could ask him what was wrong, though, the man continued. So, anyway, how are you feeling? Good, I guess. A bit tired and confused. But, yeah, otherwise good. They have never been able to do that before, and none of us are sure how they even managed to do that in the first place. I see. It is definitely something we will need to keep an eye on, All Might hummed, looking thoughtful. I talked with Aizawa before he left, and I wanted to hear if you'd be alright with keeping up our usual training, even though he isn't here. Izuku couldn't help but startle at that, looking up at All Might in slight disbelief. He had honestly prepared himself to train on his own until the other man was back, thinking they would have to put a pause on to training one for all. Really? Aizawa-sensei is, okay with that? Izuku couldn't help but ask, wanting to be sure they weren't doing anything behind Shota's back. Again. He is, All Might answered with a smile. Seeing how the sports festival is only a few weeks away, it makes sense for you to get as much training in as you can, and as long as we make sure you don't go over the limit, there should be no harm in practicing your quirk. But he also said that even one injury or trip to recovery girl would lead to a ban on using your quirk until he is back, so you should really try to be cautious in how you use it, he added sternly, giving Izuku a pointed look. Izuku grimaced and gave a firm nod. Oh, okay. Then yes, I'd like that. Considering how Izuku was still tired after the whole ordeal with the vestiges earlier that day, they decided to wait with training until tomorrow. So after spending almost an hour talking about the quirk and their upcoming training, and Izuku almost falling asleep right there on the couch for the third time, All Might told Izuku to head home and rest. As he walked through the hallways of UA, he felt his mind starting to wander, going back to One for All. There were still so many unknown variables to his quirk. Black Whip had only been activated during the USJ, but never since. Was it a fluke? A one-time occurrence? And then the vestiges had, out of nowhere, been able to take over his body. But none of them knew why or how, and... Hey, nerd! The sudden loud voice coming from right behind him had Izuku scream, and he jumped high into the air before whipping around with wide eyes and a hand covering his mouth. "What the fuck are you muttering about? It's creepy," Kachan grumbled, glaring at Izuku. Izuku blinked at the other boy in surprise and lowered his hand. "Kachan? What are you doing here?" he asked nervously. He hadn't even heard the blonde walk up to him. Did he hear me? How much did he hear? Oh god, he's gonna think I'm even more crazy now. The blonde huffed and crossed his arms, pulling Izuku out of his spiraling thoughts. "Just got out from the mutt's office," he grumbled, looking away with a frown. Izuku all but jumped at the change in subject. Oh, did it go well with Hound Dog?" he asked, genuinely curious. At the mention of the therapist, Kachan grimaced. "That's none of your business, Midoriya," he bit out, stomping past him. Izuku's eyes widened, and before he knew what he was doing, he moved to grab hold of Kachan's arms, stopping him in his tracks. "No." "Huh? What do you mean, no?" Kachan huffed, jerking his arm out of his grip. "I mean, no. You are not calling me that. It's one thing that you can't call me Deku anymore, but that just means I'm Izuku. Izuku! We are way too close for you to call me by my last name, Kachan," Izuku said sternly, his voice leaving no room for arguments. Kachan stared at him like Izuku had gone insane. His eyes were wide, and his mouth was hanging open a little. "Kachan?" Izuku asked carefully. With an annoyed huff, Kachan shook his head and shoved past him. "Whatever, nerd!" the blonde grumbled. Close enough," Izuku said with a shrug, before he moved to follow his classmate. Noticing he was being followed, Kachan looked over his shoulder and twisted his face into a snarl. "What the fuck? Why the hell are you following me?" he snapped, looking offended. Izuku just rolled his eyes, feeling his lips tug up in amusement. After all, Danger Sense was peacefully quiet, meaning that right now, Kachan was all bark and no bite. "Because I'm also leaving school, and we're both heading towards the exit?" Izuku answered with a smile, feeling his steps getting lighter. "Whatever! Just don't walk in front of me!" Kachan muttered. "I won't," Izuku answered cheerfully, skidding forward so he is walking just a small step behind Kachan, almost by his side. He leaned forward and glanced over at the blonde, biting back a smile as he wondered just how far he could push this without getting the other mad. "Do you want to walk home together, Kachan? We haven't done that in a long time," Izuku asked, feeling giddy when he wasn't met with a migraine from Danger Sense or an explosion to the face. Instead, Kachan just grit his teeth and glared at Izuku. "I thought you weren't living with Inko anymore." That question caught him off guard, and he leaned back a bit. "Oh, I still live pretty close to your place, actually," Izuku said with a shrug. It was true, after all. Shota and Toshi lived pretty close by Kachan's house. "So you do live somewhere else," the blonde grumbled, walking out the door and seemingly unconsciously holding the door open long enough for Izuku to slip out too. Yeah," Izuku answered, starting to regret his decision to walk with Kachan now. Of course the blonde would ask questions. "It's that hobo, isn't it?" Izuku stumbled, almost falling down the stairs. Yeah," he answered sheepishly, ducking his head. "So you lied!" Kachan snarled, voice sounding angry and laced with something Izuku couldn't quite recognize. Izuku's eyes widened and he turned to look up at Kachan. The blonde wasn't looking at him though, instead glaring straight ahead. What?" Izuku asked, feeling confused about just what he had lied about, that Kachan knew of. "About the no teachers know about your quirk. You lied! Right to my face!" Kachan growled, turning to glare at Izuku, who was staring right back, his eyes widening even more with the sudden realization. He had said something like that, hadn't he? "Oh, no, he actually doesn't know about that," Izuku answered, looking away guiltily. It was Kachan's time to stumble, and he stopped in his tracks, staring at Izuku like he was insane. "You can't be fucking serious!" he said, his voice filled with disbelief and his eyes wide. "I am?" Izuku answered with a sigh. "It's been years!" Kachan choked out. "Yup. And he's a damn pro hero! How the fuck did you manage that?" Kachan all but yelled, his arms thrown up in the air. Izuku glanced up at Kachan, and he smiled weakly and shrugged. "Determination?" Kachan just stared at him. Izuku stared back. And then, for some reason, Kachan started to laugh. Not one of those mockery or cruel or fake laughs. No, this one was loud and uncontrolled as the boy clutched his stomach and threw his head back. Izuku hadn't heard Kachan laugh like that since kindergarten, and he couldn't help but laugh too when he heard the sound. For the next minute or so, they both just stood there, in the middle of the schoolyard, laughing hysterically. Probably looking insane if anyone would walk past them. "Holy fuck, Izuku!" Kachan wheezed, his voice a bit rough from laughing. Yeah, just don't tell him, please," Izuku wheezed back, voice sounding breathless, even to his own ears. "What? Of course I won't fucking tell him! I want to see how long you can drag this shit out! But damn, he's in for a surprise if he ever finds out!" "Yeah, I don't think he would be very happy," Izuku muttered guiltily, only to earn him a shove to the shoulder from Kachan. "Wouldn't blame him. No one wants to learn that their pet is secretly some human creep in disguise." He chuckled with a grin, looking amused. Inside of Izuku's mind, the vestiges seized, their collective chest burning with anger. "What the hell does this brat know?" "Yeah, don't listen to him, Izu." Izuku just shook his head. "That's kind of why I don't plan on telling him. Things are fine as they are, and I don't want to risk being kicked out, both from home and from UA." "Smart move," Kachan muttered with a nod, before he kept walking. "No, not smart move. Bad move. Very bad move." Izuku just rolled his eyes at the vestiges and followed Kachan. They continued to walk in silence for a while, exiting the school grounds and making their way down the hill until Kachan went back to frowning, a thoughtful expression on his face. Izuku was just about to ask him what was wrong, when the other turned to look at him. "Hold on! If he doesn't know you're his cat, then how the hell did you two meet before school started? And how did you even get into UA without a quirk?" Izuku had to suppress the urge to bury his face in his hands and groan. "I already told you. I punched the giant robot with my new quirk," he whined, frustrated that Kachan hadn't listened. "People don't just magically get new quirks, though," Kachan pointed out, rolling his eyes. That had Izuku roll his eyes right back at him, and he crossed his arms, frowning at the blonde. "And people don't just get their quirk at 12 years old either, and yet here we are." Kachan shook his head and sighed. "Right, of fucking course. Well then, humor me. What the hell kind of quirk do you have now?" "It's a bit complicated," Izuku answered honestly. Kachan raised an eyebrow at him, and Izuku sighed. Him, Aizawa, and All Might had gone through this explanation many times, in case One for All starts to show new powers and they need to explain his quirk. He just hadn't expected it to be this soon, though. Basically, it's a power stalking quirk. It stacks up power and energy and then shows itself in different ways, such as strengths or those black tendrils at the USJ. It might even show up in other ways in the future. I'm still trying to figure it out, he answered casually, reciting what they had gone over. Kachan looked thoughtful. "Power stock, huh? That's why it showed up so late? It needed to stock up on enough energy or something?" he asked, frowning at him. Maybe, Izuku answered, avoiding Kachan's gaze. It was a good theory, one Izuku really should just nod and agree with, but for some reason, Izuku just couldn't bring himself to lie to his childhood friend. Were they even friends anymore? Izuku had no idea. The vestiges kept telling him that Kachan wasn't his friend, that friends don't act like he had done in the past. Which, yeah, that was probably true. But things aren't the same as they were before. Was there really no way for them to start over? If there was, Izuku would like that. You do know that having two separate quirks is complete bullshit, right? Kachan grumbled next to him, drawing Izuku out of his own thoughts. Like, even if you want to hide the cat quirk from others, it still won't take away the fact that you somehow have two quirks. So, what's up with that? Izuku frowned and looked around. They were currently walking down the hill from UA. It was late and the sun was going down on the horizon, and there was no one else around them but them. He glanced back at Kachan and took a deep breath, making his decision. Kiddo, don't. I got the second quirk from someone else, Izuku blurted out. Inside his mind, several loud slaps could be heard from when the vestiges face-palmed. God fucking damn it! Why him? Of all the brats in the world, why tell him? Kachan stared at him, having again come to a complete stop. Kachan? That's the excuse you're going for? Kachan bit out with a glare. Huh? Izuku blinked in surprise, having not expected that. Seriously, if you don't want to tell me, then fine. Don't. But don't fucking lie to me. Kachan snapped, his fists clenching at his sides and shaking. I'm not lying. This quirk can be passed down and has done so for generations, and the last user passed it to me. Oh yeah? And who is this mysterious last user, then? Kachan interrupted, his voice almost challenging. I can't tell you. I won't tell you. But I'm also not lying, Kachan, Izuku answered, looking directly at the other boy, begging him to believe him. He wasn't sure why it was so important, but he wanted Kachan to believe him. They looked at each other for another tense moment, before Kachan groaned and dragged a hand over his face. You're serious? He grumbled. Yes, I wouldn't lie to you about this, Izuku answered honestly, still looking at him with determined eyes. Kachan groaned again. Fine, whatever. It's total bullshit. But so are you getting into UA in the first place, and so what the hell do I know? He said, throwing his hands up in the air. Kachan... Now come on, Kachan interrupted him, turning around so they could keep walking. I want to actually reach the damn train today. Unless you have some more secrets you want to share? He asked, looking at Izuku over his shoulder. Izuku relaxed when he saw that Kachan didn't look angry anymore, a small smile on his face. Oh, there is one more, actually, Izuku said, feeling his own lips curl up in amusement. Of fucking course there is, Kachan grumbled, shaking his head. And what's that, nerd? Nerd. Izuku's smile grew impossibly wide. Oh, nothing serious. Just that this quirk is haunted by 7 ghosts. They say hi, by the way, he answered cheerfully, walking past Kachan, who had stopped to just stare at him again. His jaw dropped to the ground. You what? He yelled out, jogging to catch up with Izuku. Kiddo, no! Why are you like this? The vestiges cried inside his mind, causing Izuku to laugh. Needless to say, Kachan did not believe him about the ghosts, but Izuku would like to believe that the two of them had grown closer that day. The weeks after that went by in a blur. Him and Kachan would occasionally walk home together, if Kachan's appointment with Town Dog lined up with Izuku's training. Even though Izuku never admitted who he trained with, he was pretty sure that Kachan had already figured it out. He wouldn't be surprised if Kachan had even figured out that his quirk came from All Might himself. And speaking of All Might, just like they decided, his mentor joined Izuku in his training and tried to help him with his quirks. Keyword being tried. Izuku had told him about being able to activate Black Whip at the USJ, but for some reason, he couldn't use it again. No matter what he did or how much he tried, he wasn't even able to demonstrate a single thread of that power. Same thing with the possession. Him and the Vestiges had talked about it and decided they wanted to try and train this new power too. But just like Black Whip, no matter how much the Vestiges tried to take over, they just couldn't. It was like there was this giant vault in the way, blocking them out. And Izuku had tried everything he could think of, even meditating to help them come out. But to no avail. Maybe they needed a shared, strong source of emotion to do it? After all, they had been pretty upset with Aizawa when they took over. It was clear that All Might was disappointed, and Izuku couldn't blame him. It was clear he was missing his mentor, and would like to speak with her again. Izuku hoped they would be able to do it one day. At least Full Cowl was getting a bit easier to use, so that's something. But so far, he could just barely walk while using it, unless he wanted to risk another injury, which, while it was an improvement, didn't exactly make it any useful in combat. It was frustrating, to put it lightly. Seriously, what's the point of having multiple quirks if none of them work correctly? Izuku found himself thinking, glaring down at his clenched fists as the sparks of One For All danced around his skin. Patience, kiddo. You're getting there, Nana said gently from beside him. Izuku took a deep breath, willing himself to calm down. It was fine. He'd just have to get through the sports festival without relying on his quirks. Izuku made a mental note of speaking to Nezu about applying to use some of his support items, though he had a sneaking suspicion that his knives would be banned. But maybe he could at least bring his capture weapon? During training, he kept noticing All Might looking at him strangely. It seemed like he was thinking about something. Izuku was pretty sure he knew exactly what he was thinking about. After all, weeks had gone by, and they still hadn't talked about the whole dad incident. Apparently, All Might was just as bad as Izuku when it came to not bringing things up to the surface. The man never said anything, and Izuku never asked him, happily playing the role of an oblivious kid. That was until the end of the second week, with the sports festival right around the corner, when All Might seemed to have reached his limit and approached him after training. Hey, young Midoriya, could we talk for a moment? His mentor asked, looking nervous. Internally, Izuku was cursing out a storm and freaking out. Damn it, Toshi, are we really gonna do this? You couldn't have just left it alone? On the outside, he remained calmed and smiled nervously at his mentor. Oh, sure, All Might. Is something wrong? All Might looked a bit awkward and shifted his weight, like he was nervous. And Izuku kind of hoped the man would chicken out. No luck, though, because just when Izuku found himself thinking All Might would simply let it go and walk away, the man seemed to steel himself, turning towards him with a strange sort of determination. Well, it's just, at our apartment a few weeks back, as well as after the villain attack, you called me, you called me Dad, and I think we should perhaps talk about that. God fucking damn it! Izuku cursed silently, ignoring the Vestiges berating him for his language. Oh, that. Sorry. he said softly, staring down at the ground and feeling his cheeks growing warm in embarrassment. No, no, it's okay. I didn't mind. I mean, anyway. All Might coughed into his hand, looking just as uncomfortable as Izuku felt. I was just wondering about your own father. Is he around? Izuku frowned down at the ground and kicked a pebble with his feet. Not really, but it doesn't matter. He's been gone for years anyway, he answered with a shrug, trying to act indifferent despite the slight ache in his chest. Why do you ask? You think he's a villain or something? Izuku asked, remembering the several conversations he had overheard between Toshi and Shota ever since the USJ attack. All Might paled and was quick to backtrack, waving his hands around. No, of course not. That's not why I was just wondering why you would call me that, and if there was someone, if you have a father figure in your life. Oh, was all Izuku managed to say, keeping his gaze low. Well, do you? All Might prompted gently. It's embarrassing, he whined, burying his face in his hands. I won't laugh, the man reassured him. I guess you and Aizawa fit that role pretty well, Izuku muttered, burying his face further and hunching into himself. But, don't you dare tell Aizawa I said that, he then added in a hurry, voice coming out in almost a hiss. Despite his promise not to, Izuku heard the man laugh, and he blushed a bright red, looking up at All Might in betrayal. You said you wouldn't laugh! He whined. Izuku whined, feeling embarrassed. Sorry, my boy. I'm not laughing at you, I swear. All Might chuckled, smiling brightly down at him. I'm just happy. Happy? Izuku echoed, furrowing his brows in confusion. Why would he be happy about Izuku not having a father? Yes, well, I'm certainly not happy that you never had anyone like that in your life, but I'm glad that you see us as someone you can trust and view as in such a light, he said, voice light and reassuring. Izuku blinked up at him, feeling dizzy. You're not mad? He asked quietly, holding his breath and waiting for the guillotine to come down. Mad? He repeated, as if the mere idea was ridiculous. Not at all, my boy. Why ever would we be mad at you? He sucked in a sharp breath and looked down at the floor. The room was spinning around them, making it hard to think. Oh, Izuku said softly, a small smile tugging at his lips as he clutched his hands together and pressed it to his chest. Young Midoriya, are you all right? All Might asked, his voice laced with worry. Huh? Izuku looked up at All Might, his vision blurry. Wait, when did it get so blurry? Confused, Izuku raised a hand to his face, feeling tears running down his cheeks. He hadn't even noticed he had started crying. Are you okay? All Might repeated, taking a step closer. Izuku's attention snapped back to the moment at hand, and he found himself, for once, not having to force a smile onto his face, his hands once again clasped together in front of him like a lifeline. I'm fine, he stammered before nervously glancing up at All Might. I should probably go now, but, see you later, Dad, Izuku said, the last word coming out as barely a whisper. The smile he got in return was almost blinding, and before either could say anything else, Izuku literally bolted out of the gym, his face a bright red and his heart beating rapidly. Holy shit, I can't believe I said that, he thought, embarrassed. Though, despite the usual panic, there was also something else. He was feeling happy? Or at least something close to that. Izuku's smile grew with every step that he took. He wasn't mad, he whispered out loud, a huge grin on his face. Told ya, kiddo. Nana giggled, sounding just as happy as he was feeling. Later that evening, back in the safety of his hideout, Izuku would find himself having another panic attack over that whole interaction. But that was to be expected. And even later that evening, a tired Broccoli came home to find a still gushing Toshi and Shota, the latter sitting with Slushy on his lap as he listened to Toshi rambling about what had happened. With a purr, Broccoli walked up to the couch and laid down on Toshi's lap, purring louder when he felt the man run a hand over his back and letting the soothing voice of his dad lull him to sleep. Tomorrow was a big day for Izuku, after all. Next up, Sports Festival! Author's notes. Kachan calls Izuku by his last name. Izuku. No. What's that? Actual acceptance and emotional growth from Izuku? Impossible! Haha, okay, but seriously though, our boy still has a long way ahead of him. Trauma doesn't just heal overnight, but his walls are finally starting to crack, just a little. Whether that's a good thing or not is left to see. So, like mentioned before, next chapter will tackle the sports festival. And just like the USJ, we'll cover the whole arc in one chapter and skip most canon scenes, unless they are somehow altered, just to speed things along. Really excited to share the next chapter with you, and I hope you'll look forward to it. Until then, hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for reading. And that's a wrap for chapter 19 of The One They Call Broccoli. Sorry for long pauses. There was actually one at the beginning where I meant to pause the recording, and then apparently I didn't click the pause button, so you could just hear me sniffle. And then I paused it to go get water, but also, there were sometimes I was reading, and, like, I do this thing wherever I'm doing the voices, I'll look away and I'll, like, close my eyes to do the voice, and then I'll look back at the chapter, and I'm like, holy shit, where was I? I really like Kachan's name. A little fun fact from the original, not from the original, a little fun fact from, like, the My Hero canon universe is that Kachan means, like, loud, and that's the nickname Izuku gave him because he was loud as a child. It just means, like, loud shouting or whatever. So that's funny. Please go show the author Texiliaz some love. The writing's amazing. I know I say it every time, but it really is amazing. I think we're in for a long one next chapter too, so that'll be fun. And yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed this. I hope that y'all are still all engaging with this. You're all still finding it fun, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye, pups.